Hi there, got a neat project today. I need to lock up this cage behind me in a way that is much more secure than the standard type pin drop through lock that comes with these things that you can cut through with a pair of scissors.
Buckle up for safety as I give you a day in the life of facilities maintenance.
Well, today I'm working on a bit of a custom project. I have to make a hasp to fit this puck lock. Yes, you can buy them, but they don't fit this one.
As I mentioned, we need to make this cage more secure so we can lock up our side-by-side. But this just won't cut it. We want to go with a puck lock. However, the puck locks that you can generally buy off the shelf, basically the offshore knockoff versions of what used to be a much better product. The issue with those is that we need to be able to key them to fit our key system, and they just don't accept the cylinder. Now, fortunately, our local locksmith had one that would work and would accept our cylinder, and you would think that I could then just buy the backing plate hasp and use this puck lock on that, but it actually doesn't work. Where this slotted area is in the back of the lock is in a different location than on the offshore ones, so I have to manufacture my own hasp out of this piece of metal right here. So I guess if you get right down to it, this is going to become a how-to video on how to make a hasp for a puck lock. I picked up a nice 12-inch long piece of angle iron from Metal Mart here in Langley. I can't tell you actually what size of angle iron it is. I just eyeballed it and thought this would make a good one, and it will. And I'm starting by cutting it in half, so I will have two 6-inch pieces when I'm done. And for those of you wanting to duplicate this process who are already pissed off at me because I didn't tell you what size I purchased, the reason the size doesn't really matter is because I will be making it the size that it needs to be. I just needed some rough stock to start with. And same thing with this piece of pipe. I think it was 3.5 inches in diameter, but I'm not 100% sure. Again, I just eyeballed it.
So obviously before you start building any project like this, you want to assemble all your parts and figure out how to systematically put them together. With the parts I've got here, I think you can probably see where I'm going with this now. These pieces of angle iron are my hasp material, and where my thumb is basically where that hasp is going to be, and then this whole shebang is going to mount right to the gate like this. In fact, looking at this, there's no need to have it be as wide as it is, so I'm probably going to take about 3/8 of an inch off of the side of each one. Something like that. I also have to cut out the portions here that will allow me to turn this into a hasp, but I think I'll save that step till last. I'll work on this stuff first, simply because it'll be much easier to work on with this nice big handle right here. Although I'll probably have to cut this by hand because I don't know if it'll fit in the clamp of this saw, but it might actually, looking at this. So close, it fits in the clamp, but the blade guide here, it's not quite large enough for that. So I'll have to cut it by hand. Gonna go get some better glasses. Last time I did this, I got a little speck of metal in my eye. There we go. So I think next I'm going to put a slight little radius on these corners. I think that'll look nicer.
Now, if I can give you a bit of a tip when using a belt sander, or any tool for that matter, don't force it, don't push too hard, and in the case of a belt sander like this, I always try and use up the whole belt rather than concentrate on one location. I try and move my material back and forth across the belt in smooth motions, not putting too much force on there. Let the machine do the work, and try and use a different spot of the belt so you're not wearing out a single groove in the belt, if that makes sense. Well, I've radiused my corners. They look quite nice. I'm happy with that. Now I need to figure out this shackle. I've checked and the width of this fits in here, so that is fantastic. I'll obviously need to take this down a little bit, but that'll be my last cut. The first cuts I need to make are down and across on either side, basically creating tabs right here that will fit inside this recessed area of the lock. Okay, that should work. I cleaned up the edge here so I could see my marks nice and visible. This is 6 inches altogether, so I found center at 3. I can have a full 1.5 inch wide hasp and it'll fit in here. So I've gone 3/4 of an inch on either side of my center mark. Now to cut this, I think I'm actually going to use our little power hacksaw over there and just stop it when it reaches near the bottom of the of my cut lines. Those ones I can do on the machine. I'll then have to cut the rest of it by hand. And I'm clamping these together before I even move them over to the saw, because I want to make sure that in relation to each other, that these two pieces don't move at all. In fact, I would do the same thing even if I was going to cut this out by hand. So I think you're able to pick up what I'm putting down here. That's where I'm going to make my cut. As I was cutting this, I realized, it's not the depth of the cut that I need to watch. It's right here. So I pulled back just before I got to the edge of my metal here, because the blade isn't coming down perfectly flat, right? It's hinged. So this would have been my first contact point. All right, ready for cut number 2. Okay, if you look at the width of the recessed area in the back of my puck lock, you'll see that the hasp will just fit in there. Okay, this part here and this part here is the material that I am now going to remove. Again, this one has to be done by hand. And I'm happy with these cuts. I didn't go too deep, which was my concern, because I didn't want to cut into this plate at all here. I want to be able to grind this nice and flat to make it look like, well, just all one nice smooth surface. All right, now I really think you can see what's going on here. Next steps is my depth. Before I drill any hole through here to accept the shackle in here, I need to measure my depth and make sure that these engage properly. I don't want the lock hanging off these things with a big gap in behind there. I want it to kind of fit snug. So looking at this, I am gonna have to take about 1/2 inch off the length of that.
Well, it's about 2 sizes under a 1/2 inch. So we'll see if it works. Might, again, the tolerance might be a little bit too tight. I might have to go up a couple steps. I can't do it one-handed. There we go. Come on, Key. It worked! Well, now that I know that the lock actually fits on the hasp, my next step is to figure out this protective ring that goes around the outside of it. I've made my first cut here, and you'll see how it all comes together. Now, that first cut was the easy part. It just needed to create access for the keyway. These next 2 cuts, they're a little bit trickier. They need to split this actual backing plate of the hasp perfectly so that I have 2 halves. And I think the best way to do that is to tack weld it in place. In that way it will maintain its shape. If I cut it first and then try and weld the small pieces together, you'll see once it's all cut and apart that these little quarter rounds would be difficult to line up. Things could just look a little bit wonky, and I want it to look nice. So I'm tack welding it first, and then I'll make my cuts. Scared me for a second, but a little piece of weld spatter was actually holding it together, and I was thinking, oh no, I welded it wrong, but I didn't. Now you see the little Sharpie lines there? That's where I need to make my cuts. One on this side and one on the other side. Now if you can imagine cutting these lines first before tack welding it in place, I would have had to try and make a perfect circle with 3 individual pieces. Well, I'm running out of time in my shift, so I gotta get this welded up, cut, and put on the gate. I don't want to burn this nylon mesh stuff that Frank just put up, so I've undone a couple of the zip ties and pulled it back using an old coat hanger so that when I weld, I don't burn holes in it. Ideally a bungee cord would have been best, but I couldn't find one, so I had to get a little creative with the other side. You know, I don't know if it's like this with all generators, but at least with this one, it's kind of a whole series of spot welds because it can't sustain a steady weld bead. It also stalls out on me every once in a while, which, again, I've never done any welding with any other generator, so I don't know if that's normal or not. Perhaps somebody in the comments could share some insight in that regard. But managed to get it on. I'm going to clean this up now, and then I'm going to spray it with a, it's actually not paint, it's a kind of paint I guess, but it's a cold galvanized coating to kind of restore the galvanizing that I burnt through on the galvanized gate posts. Well, I thought before I hit that with galvanizing spray, I would check and see that the lock actually fits. It does. I'm really pleased with that. So there it is. That is how you build a hasp for a puck lock. Well, there we are. We are secure, at least secure as we can be. I mean, anything is penetrable. You can break into anything. You just need the right tools. But if nothing else, this will discourage the casual passerby, breaker-inner type guys. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you learned something. Have a great day.